ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं
येन तस्मै श्री
वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्णचैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृन्द हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So I'll just share the screen. So today we shall be continuing with the first verse only. No? We'll recite the verse and then continue with the today the last portion of the first verse. So many of you must be wondering that since almost 6 weeks we have been discussing only first verse on Bhagavatam. Are you going to move forward or not? So today the first verse. We will actually continue. We'll just recite the verse and continue. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yasya to dayaditarataschaर्थेषु भिज्ञस्वरान् तेने हृदय आदिकवये ह्रियन्ति यत्सूर्याम् तेजोपारिगणं यथा विनिमयो यत्र सर्गो मृषाम् धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि. The translation is, O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of the creation, change, and destruction of manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representation of water, fire, and land. Only because of him do the material universes temporarily manifested by reactions of three modes of nature appear factual. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory conditions of material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. So today we are going to discuss the last portion of this verse, Satyam Param Dhimahi. So far we discussed the entire verse in the 6 parts. Today is the last line that we're going to discuss. So this means Satyam Param Dhimai. Dhimai means to meditate upon. So I meditate upon whom? Satyam Param, who is the supreme absolute truth. Satyam is absolute truth and Param is supreme. So I meditate upon him because he is the supreme absolute truth. Sri Krishna. So Krishna is considered the supreme absolute truth. Now what does it really mean? The absolute truth is called, in Sanskrit, is called Tattva or or the word which is used in this verse is called Satyam. Satyam or Tattva, very much synonymous word in Sanskrit. So, Tattva or Satyam means the absolute truth. Now, what is the meaning of absolute truth? The meaning of absolute truth or Tattva is something that is always true. For example, if I say I'm wearing specs, it's truth. But it's not absolute truth because now I'm not wearing the specs. So it was true for some moment, but now it's no more true. And now again, I'm wearing specs. So absolute truth means in all phases of time, in the past, in the present, and in the future, which remains true. So when you speak that statement, which is applicable for all the three phases of time, that is past, present, and future, that statement can be validated as true. That is called Tattva or Satya. So, among all such Satyas or Tattvas, Supreme Tattva or Supreme Absolute Truth is Krishna. That means there are other Tattvas also. Basically, the Tattvas are divided into three, or sometimes, subdivision is done, so it says 4 divisions of Tattva. But absolute truth is divided into 4 categories. Sometimes 3, sometimes 4. Actually 3 only, but one part is divided further into 2 parts. So one is called Vishnu Tattva, other is called Shiva Tattva, and third is called Shakti Tattva. Now the Shakti Tattva is sometimes divided into again 2 parts. One is Jiva Tattva and Shakti Tattva. So you can say at the most 3 to 4 Tattvas are there. If you consider Jiva and Shakti separately, then there are 4 Tattvas. 4 absolute truths. Let's try to understand each and every one of those. Then we'll come to the Supreme Absolute Truth. So, I am Spirit Soul. I am Atma. And Krishna gives them a lot of information in Bhagavad Gita about this Atma. So when I say I am Atma, Aham Brahmasmi, okay, or I am Atma, this is true in all phases of time. So I am Atma now. I was Atma in the past. As much as you want to go in the past, millions, billions, trillions, zillions of years, I was Atma. And similarly in the future also, I will remain as Atma. So that is absolute truth. That is Jiva. This Tattva about Jiva. Then there is Shakti Tattva. So Jiva is also considered basically Shakti, but it's called Tatastha Shakti. So Shaktis are generally divided into 3 categories. One is Krishna's Antaranga Shakti, Tatastha Shakti, and Bahiranga Shakti. So, we as living entity, we belong to Jiva Shakti or Tatastha Shakti. Then there is Krishna's other Shaktis as well, Antaranga and Bahiranga Shaktis. So, Antaranga Shakti are the associates of Krishna who are serving him directly in the spiritual world. And Bahiranga Shakti are the material nature, which is also Krishna's energy. So in this way, there are innumerable divisions of those energies, spiritual as well as material. They all fall in Shakti Tattva. Then comes Shiva Tattva. Shiva Tattva is in the category of Isha or Ishvara Tattva. So he is absolute truth, and he is also superior to all the jivas. He's not jiva, he's superior to jiva, but he is always subordinate to the third tattva, that is Vishnu Tattva, which is the category of supreme absolute truth. So we are absolute truth, we are Atma. But Shiva is also Atma, but he is the great Atma. Not exactly Param Atma, but he is great among all the, not among all, let's say he's greater than all the jivas, but he's subordinate to Lord Vishnu. So that is Lord Shiva or Shiva Tattva. And then comes Vishnu Tattva, which is in the category of absolute, supreme absolute truth. Again, in the Vishnu Tattva also there are a lot of divisions. And among all those divisions, the topmost is considered Krishna. So Krishna is actually truly the supreme absolute truth. And all the Vishnu forms are his expansions. Sometimes we hear that Krishna is incarnation of Vishnu. That means original God is Vishnu. He came or he appeared as Krishna. But Bhagavatam does not support that. The Srimad Bhagavatam clearly mentions Krishna to be the supreme absolute truth. And we will read many, many verses. When we are reading Bhagavatam, we will come across many, many verses which are clearly indicating that Krishna is actually the source of all the Vishnu expansions. There's not just one Vishnu, there are many Vishnu forms. And all those Vishnu forms have their source in Krishna. Here's the one of the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam only, which comes in much later in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. In the 14th chapter, 14th verse. It says, this is the prayer by Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is praying to Krishna in this way. He says, Naranasnatvam hi sarva dehinam atmasi adishakhila loka sakshi Narayanongam narabhu jalayana Achapi satyam nataveva maya. So he's praying, O Lord of Lords, you are the seer of all creations. You are indeed everyone's dear life. Are you not therefore my father Narayan? Because when Brahmaji is praying like this, O Lord of Lords, you are the seer of all creation. You are indeed everyone's dear life. So, the seer of all seers is considered Paramatma. Like Gita Bhagavata also Krishna says, Upadrishta Anumanta Bharta Bhokta Maheshwara. The supreme seer who is seated in everyone's heart and is witnessing everyone's activity, that is Paramatma. Upadrishta Anumanta. Upadrishta means he is seer or super seer. He actually sees everyone's activities and he actually monitors everyone's consciousness as well. Not just activities, but even what a person is thinking in the mind is also being monitored by this seer of all creations. So, Krishna, if he says, Brahmaji, what are you saying? I'm not the seer of all creation, it is Paramatma or Lord Narayan. So Brahmaji is asking this question. Narayanas nat tvam hinas sarva dehina. Are you therefore not my father Narayan? Narayan refers to one whose abode is in the water born from Nara. And that Narayan is your plenary portion. All your plenary portions are transcendental. They are absolute and are not creations of Maya. So here, Brahmaji is making it very clear that Lord Krishna is actually the original Narayan. He is the origin of even Narayan. So here it is being said, Satyam Param Dhimahi. I meditate upon that supreme absolute truth. So meditation on the Supreme is something very crucial and important aspect of human existence. It is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Yena kena prakarena manah Krishna niveshe. A person, one who wants to be successful in life, what should he do? Yena kena prakarena. By this way or that way. Some way or other. Yena kena prakarena. By some ways or some means. What should a person do? Mana Krishna nivesha. One should focus one's mind on Krishna. Because fixing one's mind on Krishna, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, what is the benefit of fixing one's mind on Krishna? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yanti deva vritan deva, putran yanti putreta, bhutani yanti bhuteja, yanti madhyajino pima. Krishna makes it very clear in Bhagavad Gita that yanti deva vritan deva. Those who worship different devas, somebody is worshipping Ganesha, somebody is worshipping Kartikeya, somebody worships Mother Parvati or Lord Shiva, somebody worships Indra, somebody worships Kubera, somebody worships Lakshmi Devi. So in this way, different people are worshipping different devas. So if somebody worships Deva, after leaving this body, Krishna says, Yanti Deva, Vritan Deva. So if you worship Deva, you will go to the abode of Devas. Pitran Yanti, those who, in this world you find a lot of people are very much staunch and very much fond of worshipping Pitras. They every day perform Pitra Yajna. Without that, they won't even eat. See some people like that as well. They are so rigid. They will worship every single day their Pitras. Because according to them, as scriptures also explain that we are actually indebted to our Pitras. I have this body because of my father and mother. And my father had his body because of his father and mother. And his father had body because of his father and mother. And similarly, the mother, my mother had body because of her father and mother. And they had their body because of their father and mother. So in this way, this whole chain of fathers and mothers is called Pitra. So everyone in this world is into the Pitras. Who worship Pitras sincerely and regularly, they go to the planet of Pitras. There's a planet called Pitra Loka. We consider other side of the moon is considered Pitra Loka. So the people who worship Pitras, they go to the Pitra Loka. Bhutani, those who worship ghosts, they go and become ghosts. Yanti madhyajino abhiman. Krishna says, those who worship me, they come to me without faith. This is a very crucial thing. And whatever object we worship, we slowly and gradually imbibe more and more remembrance of our worshipful deity. Whomever we are worshipping, we become more and more conscious of that person, that deity. So, it says also, if somebody worships me, he will come to me without faith. Anti madhyajino apima. Those who worship me, they come to me. And the same truth Krishna also confirms in another place in Bhagavad Gita. A person, whatever state of remembrance he has at the time of death, that state he will attain without faith. So therefore, meditating on Krishna is very, very crucial, because by meditating on him, we slowly and gradually mold our mindset to remember him always. And then there's a possibility that we can remember him at the time of death. And if you remember Krishna at the time of death, that is the easiest way to attain the goal of Krishna. Satyam Param Sindhu. Therefore, the advice is being given here to meditate on the Supreme Absolute Sri Krishna. In modern times, the easiest way to meditate on Krishna is actually hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the easiest way to meditate on Krishna's feet. So this is actually a very wonderful message in the last line of this verse. Satyam Param. Let us meditate or focus our consciousness on Param Satya. Param Satya, Shri Krishna. And actually, Bhagavad Gita is a song sung by this Satyam Param. Sri Krishna, the absolute Supreme Absolute Truth, is the one who has actually spoken this message of Bhagavad Gita. So hearing that message of Bhagavad Gita is one of the easiest way to be Krishna conscious. Or hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a song sung about Bhagavan. Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Bhagavan, and Bhagavatam is spoken about Bhagavan. These are the two most potent ways in the modern times to fix our mind on Krishna. And in order to learn how to focus our mind on Krishna, we have to actually learn from the lives of great Vaishnavas. The lives of great devotees who are actually referred also in the scriptures as Mahajanas. So we have to actually look into the lives of Mahajanas or great devotees and learn how to fix our mind on Krishna. Because the principles of Dharma or the principles of scriptures or scriptural injunctions are very, very confusing. It actually becomes very difficult at times to even understand the import of the scriptures. But when we look into the life of a devotee, we get a simple and sublime message how to remember Krishna, how to fix our mind on Krishna. Like say, for example, sometimes devotees, when they have some difficulties in life, they become very much disturbed. They think, and many times we hear this question, somebody comes and says, there's so much disturbance in life. How can I possibly even think of Krishna? Krishna is not making it easy for me. It will not be possible for me to remember Krishna because it is so difficult. I am being overwhelmed by these so many difficulties. So many difficulties are simply taking toll of me. How can I remember Krishna easily? Then, if we see in the lives of Mahajans or great devotees, we can actually learn that whatever difficulties I am facing, they're not even a fraction of it. If somebody is having not very good health, or the body is in pain or disease condition, one may think, oh, you know, I cannot practice Krishna, and Krishna is not making it easy for me. But then look at the life of the great Mahajans like Bhishma Dev. He was remembering Krishna at the time of his death when his body was actually pierced with so many arrows. He was lying on a bed of arrows which were pierced through his body. Who can say that they have this much or this amount of pain? If somebody can be in so much pain that his whole body is pierced with the arrows, and yet the person can actually remember Krishna or fix his mind on Krishna, then we have better scope of fixing our mind on Krishna. Similarly, if somebody thinks, Srila Prabhupada gives a beautiful example. He says, if somebody thinks, if somebody thinks I'm just a child, I'm hardly going to school, this is not the age for me to fix a point on Krishna. This is the age for me to play and go to school, listen to parents, and that's all. Nothing else is my duty. You can look at Prahlad Maharaj. He was just a 5-year-old child and had to go through so much difficulty. And yet, he was always had his mind fixed on Krishna. Similarly, we have examples of Parikshit Maharaj. He was cursed to die within 7 days. What did he do? He left all his kingdom, all his luxuries, all the relationships he cut off when he got to know that in 7 days he's going to die. And he sat down on the bank of river Yamuna simply to hear Krishna Katha from the mouth of Sri Krishna. So from the lives of great devotees or great Vaishnavas, we learn how to fix our mind on Krishna. And of course, it's not possible for anyone and everyone to start remembering Krishna or to focus their mind on Krishna. Because Krishna actually explains in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, one has to be sukrita. One has to some sukriti to be able to fix his mind on Krishna. There are 2 categories of people described in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Sukritina and Dushkritina. Namam Dushkritino Muna Prapadyante Naradha. Maya Aparita Dhyana Asuram Bhavam Ashrita. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Namam Dushkritino Mudha. Those who are Dushkriti, who are actually sinful people, they are of 4 categories. Namam Dushkritino Mudha. Mudha means a fool. These are the 4 categories of sinful people who never go to Krishna. Prapadyante Naradham. So, Namam Dushkritino Mudha. First is Mudha. And then second is Naradhama. Mudha means fool, and Naradhama means lowest of mankind. Lowest of mankind means a person may have big degrees, may be having PhD or double PhD, but who doesn't even have this much substance to actually understand that there is some God. God exists. A lot of people, who become highly educated, they start proclaiming or boldly speaking out, there is no God. So, namam dishritna mudha prapadyante naradhama maya aparita jnana. Third one is those whose knowledge is stolen by maya. So, naradhama practically means a person who, in spite of attaining this human form of life, doesn't really inquire the purpose of life. But Maya Aprita Jnana means actually a person has big, big degrees, but boldly claims no God. That means apparently people think that he's learned, but actually his knowledge is stolen by Maya. Maya Aprita Jnana. And Asura. Asura means atheistic, demonic people. These are the four classes of people who never surrender to Krishna. In contrast to these four, Krishna also explains in Gita that there are four kinds of people who actually do try to meditate on Krishna or fix their mind on Krishna. So let's try to understand who are these four. We are discussing about meditating on Krishna or fixing our mind on Krishna. So these four people, Krishna says, Chaturveda bhavante ma jana sukrite vajana arto jigyasur arthati jnani cha bhavasya. There are four people, four categories of people. First is Chaturveda bhavante ma jana sukritino arjuna. So all these four categories, they are called Sukriti. Sukriti, like the other four people, other four categories are called Dushkriti. These four categories are called Sukriti. Sukriti means pious people. They are actually pious because they are able to remember Krishna. So Jana Sukriti Arjuna, what are the four Sukritis? Artha. Artha means a person who is distressed. Sometimes people have a lot of distress in life, but all the people who are distressed in life, they don't turn to Krishna. They don't start remembering Krishna. They don't start meditating on Krishna. They don't take to the message of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. So many people who have distress in this world. But how many people really try to understand who am I? What is soul? So one has to be a Sukriti. To be in distress and be a Sukriti, that person will turn his attention to Krishna. Artho Jigyasu. Second category is a person who is Jigyasu, who is inquisitive. Like in the night time, you look at the stars, somebody thinks, is there anyone who lives on those stars? Is there anyone who lives on the moon? So a person has Jigyasa, but he doesn't turn his attention to scientists. He turns his attention to scriptures. He turns his attention to God. Oh God, please help me to understand. And third category is Arthati. Arthati means a person who wants money. Sometimes people, they want money, they go to temple. They worship God. Please God, give me this. Dhanam dehi, bharya dehi, rupam dehi, dhanam dehi. There are prayers like that. Please give me beautiful wife or beautiful form. Rupam dehi, dhanam dehi. Give me wealth. Bharya dehi, give me a beautiful wife. And this way, people who want something, arthati, artho, or jigyasu, arthati. Arthati is the person who actually wants something in return. Jnani cha bhajati. And ultimately a jnani. So in this way, and fourth of course is jnani. Jnani is a person who actually hungry for jnana. He wants to understand from the scriptures what is God, how does he look like, Who am I? What is my relation with God? So person who's looking for this jnana is called jnani. So these four categories of people who do actually try Krishna or take to the process of meditating on Krishna. So there are a few examples. Seeking relief from material miseries. So Artha, Gajendra we see in Bhagavatam, he was in a distress. He, being an elephant, being an animal of land, he went to a lake, and when he was drinking water, he was caught by a crocodile in the water. And he fought with the crocodile for a very, very long time. But because the Gajendra was in the water, which is not the natural condition for the elephant, and crocodile was in the water, which is natural condition for the crocodile. So crocodile was becoming more and more stronger in the battle because he was comfortably situated. But Gajendra was becoming weaker and weaker. So in the distressful condition, Gajendra actually turned his attention to the Supreme Lord. And then inquisitive. Inquisitive people, as we discuss, a person who's inquisitive about knowing the things, mysterious things, like as we said, somebody living on the stars, somebody lives on the moon, these are all mysteries. The person who actually wants to resolve that mystery. And then Artharthi. Artharthi means one who is looking for some material benefit. Dhruva Maharaj is an example of that. And then finally seeking knowledge. So all these categories of people, they are called Sukriti by Krishna. And these all four categories, they do become pure devotees if they continue to meditate on Krishna, even after their motives are fulfilled. So for example, Gajendra, he gets relief from crocodile, and yet he continues to worship Krishna. Then he is a pure devotee. Then he becomes pure devotee. So the purpose of meditation on the Supreme Lord is to actually become a pure devotee. And the easiest way to meditate on Krishna is, as we have been discussing, chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Very much. We'll stop here. If anyone has any questions, you may ask the question.
Ruchi, is there any example for seeking knowledge in Puranas?
Seeking knowledge. Nothing that actually Chatush Kumaras are considered in the category of Jnanis. Yes.
What about all the sages meditating on prachetas, all these sages they mention like they're doing tapasya. Are they like seeking knowledge?
Well, we can say one way, but specifically seeking knowledge means a person who is seeking the Vedic wisdom or the knowledge that is coming from the Vedas. Not any knowledge. Knowledge about the absolute truth. A person who is inquisitive about or who's seeking after the knowledge of the absolute truth. That is the category of Jnani. Somebody who wants to do PhD, he's not Jnani. Somebody might do 2 or 3 PhDs. He's not in the category of Jnanis.
What about inquisitive Prabhuji? Are there any examples?
Because I couldn't recollect anything, therefore I left those two categories. But sure, there are examples in the scriptures as well. Nothing comes to my mind, but there are examples of that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Thanks for such a nice class, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I have one small doubt, Prabhuji.
That's cool.
So according to the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, I think we can worship Krishna should be fine. We don't need to worship any demigods. Then why Lord Sri Krishna, he only suggested to all devotees do Ganapati Puja and read Ganapati story on the Chaturthi, Ganesh Chaturthi on the day. Prabhuji, and the Samantakamani story, if everybody will get rid of all. Can you please explain me that story, Prabhuji? Why Krishna suggested to worship Lord Ganesha on Chaturthi?
Actually, I never read such a references in the Bhagavatam or anywhere that Krishna says one should worship Ganesh on Chaturthi. I don't know where you heard it from, but I never heard such a reference. Do you have any scripture reference?
And not in Bhagavatam, Prabhuji. Ganapati in the story, they mentioned Samantakamani Chitrajitu in the story, Prabhuji. And Krishna saw the moon on Chaturthi that day. So
this is more or less portion. It's not that Krishna is dependent on any material arrangements for anything to happen to him. And nothing happens to Krishna or nothing transpires in Krishna's activities or his existence because of some curses or some arrangements in the material world. We should always remember Krishna is always beyond material existence. Even when he comes to this material world, he is beyond the material existence. He is not bound by the rules and regulations and the laws of this material existence. Just like, take example. Prabhupada gives example sometime of this world as a prison. So just imagine if a king comes to visit a prison house. Okay, a king is coming to the prison house to visit. Is it when you see the king following the rules of prison house, he's forced to follow those? Is he forced to follow like all the other prisoners in the jail?
No, Prabhuji.
He's fully independent. He has come into the prison by his own will, and even the prison keepers are all subordinate and servant of him. Right? So even if you see that king is obediently, the prison keeper or the commander of the prison says, let's walk in this way, and he starts walking in that way. The king is obliged to follow him? No. He simply follows him because that person is superintendent and he respects that superintendent of the prison house. When Krishna comes to this material world, apparently you will see sometime, and here also from the scriptures, Krishna is worshipping some demigod. Like in Mahabharata, there's definitely